the lack of knowledge today among people who teach halakha, who teach what halakha is, it's remarkable. People don't have a methodology. People say things that are just odd to hear. I'll give you an example. One issue that I've dealt with in 2 videos, because it's really important, and it's important because it's an obvious avera that people are making, and people are doing this avera publicly, and it's sad to see that. Saying beracha on Yom Ha'atzmaut on Hallel, it's isur deoraita. It's isur of lo tisai et Shem Adonai Elohecha l'shav. Now, just so you understand, it's not just that it's a public avera, but as I said in my previous class that was posted yesterday, it's an avera for which there is no forgiveness. The pasuk says, "Vayabor Adonai al panav vayikra Adonai Adonai el rachum v'chanun el chatayim v'rachis v'emet noser chesed l'anafim noser amon v'vesha v'chata'a v'nakeh." So the Chachamim say, what does it mean v'nakeh? V'nakeh means God will ultimately forgive you for these sins. So if a person does a sin, God forgives the person for his sins. But it says in the case of lo tasai et Shem Adonai elecha l'shav ki lo yenakeh Adonai et asher tisai et Shemo l'shav. In this case, there's no forgiveness. That's very heavy. That's very heavy, meaning most sins, nakeh. If a person makes teshuvah, forgiven for the avera. In this case, lo yenakeh. If you start chas v'shalom saying the name of God in vain, that's not forgivable, because you're desecrating God's name. You're chas v'shalom, you're cheapening, you're treating it in a way that's unbecoming and disrespectful, and God doesn't forgive people who disrespect him like that. So, so why am I mentioning this whole thing? So I saw like this Moroccan rabbi, and he's, I love, and I think is a wonderful, wonderful Tamil Chacham. I'm not saying, and I'm not going to mention his name because I don't think it's fair for me to criticize somebody and he's not here, and I'm not going to give him a chance to answer. So I'm just not going to mention his name because I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's a wonderful Tamil Chacham, and he gives very nice classes. But then he wants to like prove that you're supposed to say beracha on Yom Ha'atzmaut on Hallel. So he wants to prove that. So he interviews the son of a Moroccan rabbi. Now the son is now old. The rabbi passed away many years ago. And he says, I remember my father said, Beracha on Yom Ha'atzmaut. And then he interviews somebody else, that somebody else also, he remembers his father said Beracha on Yom Ha'atzmaut, or something of that nature. I mean, this is not an analysis of the law. That's zilzul in the Torah. You're disrespecting the Torah. How is that an analysis? That's anecdotal at best. How is anecdotal evidence in any way interesting to us? We have the mekorot. We have the actual sources. Quote to me something. Don't tell me that somebody remembers that his father once did that. That's not a Pesaq Halakha. We're talking about mentioning the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara says, if somebody mentions the name of somebody's Overa, Lo Tisai et Shem Adonai Elecha l'shav, it says, Lo Yenakeh, there's no forgiveness for that. And then it says, usually when a person does a regular avon, the person gets punished, his family doesn't get punished. In the case of a person who says, in that case, Hashem punishes the family also. Yani, this is like one of the worst, chas v'shalom, one of the worst sins that a person can do. So now we have to analyze, should we say beracha on Yom Ha'atzmaut? Oh, somebody remembers that when he's young, he remembers his father said beracha. That's not how to analyze the law. You analyze the law by opening up the actual mekorot, open up the sources. Tell me what Hanambam said, tell me what Shulchan Aruch says, explain it to me. Show me, give me some sort of consistent explanation of what the law is and why the law is like that.
Rabbi, when they do that, is it a way of saying for us to look back and figure out why is his father doing that?
Well,
when they do it in the Gemara,
I'll explain.
Rabbi did this and that.
It's irrelevant. Number one, I don't care why they're doing it. It's irrelevant to me. I'll tell you more. It's irrelevant to me why they're doing that. I suppose if I was a psychologist, I could get into their mind and try to analyze the psychology behind that. And I'm not going to do that. But not only is it irrelevant to me why they're doing it, it's irrelevant that they're doing it. Meaning, it's one thing if Am Yisrael, we were a nation of paupers. It's one thing if Am Yisrael was a nation of gypsies. We never got Torah from Sinai. We don't know what the Torah is. We have no Gemara. We have no poskim. And then you say, yeah, I remember my father. Yes, when we were in Ireland, we once went into a Scottish castle, and I remember he drank the wine with the left hand. Okay, so the myth has it. I'm like, okay, I mean, it's a very nice story. And if I had no Torah in my life, I would be very interested in that mythology, and maybe we'll all watch Harry Potter together and get excited about Harry Potter. That's just wonderful. But we have the sources. We know what Harambam said. We know what the Rif said. We know what the Rosh said. We know what the Rishpa said. We know what the Poskim says. We know how they analyze the Gemara. We have the Kesef Mishneh. The issue was discussed. We have the Magid Mishneh. We have the Mishneh LaMelech. We have all the Mefarshim and Harambam. We have the Tur Bet Yosef. So you're telling me, oh, he saw his father do that. That's how you analyze the law of Lo Tisah. The Bono Shel Olam. We're talking about people publicly mentioning the name of God on Yom HaAtzmaut and on Yom Yerushalayim. And this is your proof that they should mention the name of God. I'm sorry.
Now, when they do it, let's say with the Tanaim, that's different because the Tanaim we can trust.
It's not a question of trusting. The Gemara represents the Bet Din of the Jewish people. That's a legitimate authority to make Pesaq Halakha, meaning if I am going to make a Pesach on my own, that's wonderful. I'm not the Bet Din. Now, the Gemara is authoritative. They can actually establish the law for all of Am Yisrael, because that's what the Gemara is. The Gemara has the authority to establish the law. We cannot establish the law. What we can do is we can analyze the Gemara and try to understand how the law was established. We can't establish it independently. That's the point. Now, once the Mashiach comes and we reestablish the Sanhedrin, then the new Sanhedrin would be able to establish new laws, right? They would have their own independent authority, right? So why did I bring this whole thing? Because, methodology, Talmud, how to study. So that was one of the things that took place in the yeshiva, was how to analyze the Baraitot. We have the Sifra, we have the Sifrei, we have the Mechilta, we have the Tosefta, of course, we have the Mishnayot. So how do you analyze these things, right? So this was part of the curriculum for the Talmidei Chachamim, and this was part of the general curriculum. But then